and welcome to Hypnotize Me, the podcast about hypnosis, transformation, and healing. This is Dr. Elizabeth Bonet, and I'm your host. This podcast is not a substitute for mental health treatment, nor should it be. If you need therapy or hypnotherapy, please seek a trained professional. I do hypnosis all over the world, so if you'd like to learn more about me, you can do that at my website, drlizhypnosis.com. That's DRLIZ hypnosis.com. Now on to our episode. Hi everyone, Dr. Liz here. So today's episode is going to be wonderful. It's a really different perspective on beating addiction. But before we get to it, I do want to mention a couple of things. I am part of the podcast exchange, as you've heard on the last couple of episodes. And this week's is Emotions in Harmony. And the host is Dr. Carmen Roman. And she is really lovely. She actually puts this podcast out in both Spanish and English. So she'll do interviews, but then she'll go back and summarize if the guest does not speak Spanish for her Spanish listeners. And I was actually just on her podcast very recently talking about hypnosis, and she talks about her own experiences with hypnosis as well. I have listened to her podcast for like years now. She's put it out for years. So I suggest give it a listen. You can find her at emotionsinharmony.com, and that will be in the show notes too. So you can just click right on it and give her podcast a listen. See if you like it as much as I do. Another reminder is that you can join the newsletter now and get free hypnosis files just by texting the word hypnotize to 444-999. Super easy. Text hypnotize to 444-999 and you'll get free hypnosis files in your inbox. Today's episode is sponsored by astrologer Rachel Middleton. Rachel's an amazing astrologer, and astrology can be such a helpful tool in your life. It can help you understand something that happened in the past. It can help you see what's going on currently, like give you clarity that way, as well as let you know what's coming up in the future, like what cycle are you in and where are you in that cycle, and what would be a productive path forward for you in terms of working with what's going on in your life astrologically. So I highly recommend her. She gives a 10% discount to all of the Dr. Liz listeners and the podcast listeners. So just mention Dr. Liz or Hypnotize Me podcast for that 10% discount. You can contact her through email, firstmagnitude@gmail.com. That's the word first, FIRST, magnitude, MAGNITUDE @gmail.com. Or you can also see more about her or contact her through medium.com. So that's medium.com/iHeartAstrology. And that information is in the show notes if you want to check there too. Today's guest is Dr. Adina Silvestri. She is located in Richmond, Virginia. She has a private practice there. And she specializes in treating substance abuse issues as well as eating disorders, anger management, and resolving trauma. Those all sometimes go together. But she has a unique take on treating substance abuse in that she does not subscribe to the 12-step model. So as I say in the interview, there's a lot of therapists who won't even see someone who's in active addiction until they've gone to 12-step meetings or until they're in sobriety. But she uses a variety of techniques that we're going to talk about on the podcast today to help them without having to do 12-step. She really sees it as a very personal choice. So let's jump in and hear her perspective. Hi, Adina. Welcome to the Hypnotize Me podcast.
Hi, Elizabeth. So excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you. So today's topics I find really fascinating. One is you're an addiction and eating disorder specialist, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you attract people who don't necessarily want to be involved in the 12-step program.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So can you explain how you came to this? Because, pretty much any addiction counselor you go to will say, oh no, you've got to be in 12-step. In fact, some of them will say you've got to do a 90 and 90, which means 90 meetings in 90 days before I'll even see you, or you have to be sober for 90 days before I'll see you. So, so you are a rare breed. So tell me how this evolved for you.
Right. So, I'll say that my training was heavily steeped in the 12-step modality. I worked in a locked psychiatric unit. That was sort of my introduction to life, working with people with addiction. And so, groups and saying, hi, I'm Betty, I'm an alcoholic. I mean, those were things that were surrounding me. And I just knew that it was wrong. Like, I knew that coming from a place of fear and weakness was not going to help anybody, especially not the person that was trying to see the light and find some hope and recovery.
So you had this intuitive sense that there's just something about this that feels wrong for me.
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely. And so fast forward to when I opened the practice, I just had this website that I threw together, and I made sure that I would communicate to people in the community and online that, I'm very individualistic. I'm not going to tell you that you have to do the 12-step program. We're going to look at other programs like maybe Smart Recovery, or maybe we'll find a mentor for you that, is an atheist, or, we'll look at spirituality in different ways. And I knew that spirituality needed to be a part of the recovery program, but I wasn't okay with coming at it from a place of fear.
From a place of fear. So what do you mean coming at it from a place of fear?
That I did something wrong, that I'm wrong, or I'm bad, or anything that would elicit shame, I guess.
Okay, so you felt like when people say, hi, I'm Betty, I'm an alcoholic, that elicits shame?
I do. I think it elicits fear and it elicits shame.
Okay.
At least for the people that I see. Yeah.
Well, there's definitely something about the label, right? And continually identifying yourself like this. In fact, in a lot of hypnosis circles, it seems like, we're trying to change that label, right? Like, you don't want to be an alcoholic forever, right?
No.
No. So why would you stand up and say, hi, I'm Betty, I'm an alcoholic for 20 years, right? Like, you're reinforcing that instead of saying, no, I'm actually not an alcoholic. I don't have a problem with drinking anymore.
Right.
So is that what you mean by that?
Yes. Or sitting in a group with other individuals that are struggling and listening to all of the past memories, all of the times that you probably just want to forget.
All right. So you're in
also,
favor
I don't
of forgetting.
feel is very helpful.
Okay.
Yes.
You're in favor of forgetting. Yeah. Moving on.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you begin to think about this in terms of being a counselor, do you have addiction past yourself?
That's a great question. I do not. But I saw it in my family. It was everywhere. And my dad also had his own restaurant. And so there, I would see it up front in personal, restaurant / bar.
Yeah. Okay. So when you begin to be an addiction counselor, you're saying like, okay, I don't want to use this 12-step model, and I don't want to, you mentioned finding an atheist sponsor. So and I know that that's a huge turnoff for a lot of people, is I'm not going to go to 12-step because I'm an atheist. Like, why would I do that? And the 12-step people will often say, your higher power can be anything. It's not a belief in God necessarily, or traditional God or something, but it is a sense of spirituality outside of just yourself.
Right.
So how do you work with that in terms of atheism? And before, it's not a trick question. I want to be upfront about this, that I was an atheist for like 20 years. And then grew up very religious. A father is a minister, and then later my mother became a minister, but then I was atheist for 20 years. And then felt like in my 40s, I found a sense of spirituality where I definitely believe there's a higher power out there. It is not your traditional patriarchal God, not at all.
Right.
But it's this sense of spirituality outside of myself.
Mm-hmm.
So my ex-husband was an atheist and still is. My kids identify as atheists, despite my best intentions to introduce spirituality into their lives. So how do you work with that in terms of addiction?
Yeah. So, it's interesting. Individuals that come to me that identify as atheist still believe in something greater, whether it's, the stars or the moon or, anything. And so that's what we latch onto is their language and their meaning of what it is to believe in something greater. And that's how we incorporate it.
Okay, so are these the same people that are saying, like, no, I don't want to go to 12-step. I don't want to be part of that.
These are the same.
I don't want to stand around at the end and hold hands and pray, and where it starts with God.
Nobody wants to do that come to see me. Yeah.
Okay, so they find you somehow.
They do find me.
And they're saying that they want help beating this addiction with hypnosis.
Well, I just started the hypnosis maybe about a year ago, so they weren't coming for the hypnosis. They are now, but
okay.
But in the beginning, when I first started the practice, they weren't coming for the hypnosis. They were just coming. I guess they were just coming to talk about, how to get better without going the 12-step route. Tell me something different. Tell me, and so we would work on this comprehensive relapse plan that involves not going to 12-step model. And I wouldn't say to them, you can't do this. You can't go to a bunch of different meetings, but this is not what I'm going to subscribe to you. This is not the only way. Yeah.
Yeah. Got it. Like there's lots of ways.
There's so many ways.
To get an addiction under control. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So in terms of hypnosis.
Yes.
You said you've been doing it about a year. And why did you start doing it?
So I started doing it because I needed a tool that would help people recover quickly. People that are struggling with substance abuse and eating disorders, they generally have a trauma abuse past. And so, having them come in for months at a time and talking about these real painful emotions, I felt like it wasn't really helping. I wanted them to see progress and see it quickly. And so that's when I received some training in hypnotherapy. Wow. And I love it.
And what did you find? Did you find that the progress is faster?
It is. It's faster. So, the individuals that I see right now, they report back to me that they have seen, a shift or aha moment, or a lot of times they'll describe it as a lightness after one session.
Wow. One session.
Yes. Yeah, I know. It blows my mind.
What are you doing in that session? That's my next question. Right?
It's magic, Elizabeth.
I know. Well, I tell my clients that all the time. I had someone in my house the other day, and he's like, in the last 2 weeks, I've done what I've tried to do for 3 years in regular therapy. And it's this therapist that referred him to me.
Wow.
Because she felt like he was stuck. And so she referred him for hypnosis. But I was like, I can tell you we're rewriting neural pathways in the brain. I can tell you some of the science. I can tell you we're going into different brainwave states when we go into hypnosis. But there's an element to me that it's just magic. Like I don't quite know, and I consider it spiritual too. Like it's a healing process. Like I really believe it's my higher power working through me to help heal and give service in that way in this planet. Mm. But that doesn't quite work for an atheist, right? Like,
I don't think you should start with that.
No, I don't. I do not start with that. Only if someone's really open to hearing that will I reveal that. But I don't have to, right? Like my purpose is not theirs. Right? That's just my purpose. It can be very personal, and they can be there for whatever reason they want to be there, as long as the healing happens. Then fantastic. Wonderful. They don't have to adopt my belief system. But so you're saying one session. And what are you doing in that session? Sorry, I got off track.
Okay, that's okay. So in that session, we're doing, I call it a resource state, but for your listeners, it's just basically interviewing them for a few minutes and finding out, what they're really good at, what their strengths are. When was the last time they were really assertive in a situation, and how do they speak up for themselves, and then putting that into a script, and then they bring it home to listen to at night for that post-hypnotic suggestion. And so it's I call it Hypnolite.
Okay. And when Adina's saying script, for most of your listeners, what she's talking about is a hypnosis. So the hypnotherapists, we often call them scripts because we write it often on the spot, right?
Yeah.
Because we're putting in, particularly with custom hypnosis, we're putting in all of these good resource states, like you said, all of these good things about this person that they want to believe about themselves, that they do believe about themselves. Sometimes that varies. And then we're putting that into a hypnosis form. But in our mind, it's often a script, right?
Yes.
Like we're writing a script as we go in the session. With the client. Okay, so they're taking that file home then, the sound file.
Yeah.
And listening to it throughout their week.
Correct.
All right. And then they come back and say, hey, that was really helpful.
Yeah. And then we dive in. And then we dive into mostly shame, because I feel like that's the 1-2 punch. That's what I go for off the bat. And that's what keeps people stuck. Because I feel like you can't have self-forgiveness unless you get rid of the shame.
Okay. And shame is often at the root of addiction.
That's what I find. Shame and fear. Yes.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah. It's often a sense of shame. In fact, in my practice, we call it the shame spiral. Often, like, when are you in the shame spiral? And sometimes that's when people relapse. Or if you're talking about an eating disorder, like binging or overeating, that's when they'll go into binging or overeating. Is this feeling of shame that takes over them?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's, the addiction is to cover that shame. Right? Like, let me make it disappear.
Yeah.
But it just creates more.
I want to numb myself.
Yeah. I want to numb. Right.
Yeah.
So when you're working with shame in your practice and you're saying, let's dive in, you're doing that some through hypnosis?
I am. I mean, if they're open to it, I will do the entirety of our work together will be with hypnosis. And then if not, we'll do other things. Like I incorporate art into the practice as well.
And when you're working on shame through hypnosis, can you explain a little bit about the process of that?
Okay. So we'll talk about shame and what it looks like. And so if they identify shame as something that they want to work on, because sometimes they're not ready at that moment to work on it, but if they identify it as something that they're ready to work on, then we talk about what their life would look like without shame when they do start to feel good enough. Let's meet that future self. Let's go on a journey to meet you shame free. And so that's where we start.
So you're putting that image into the
Yeah.
hypnosis.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I want them to see it, smell it, think about it, everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Like really embody that.
Yeah.
And we know that that's often where the change is happening under hypnosis
Mm-hmm.
is when we're doing all the good stuff, right? All the healing that the brain and the body are able to really move into feeling like that. Are you also doing like exploration about where it comes from? And how do you do that?
So we will go back into the memories, we'll regress, and whatever their subconscious mind brings up, that's what we address in that moment. And then after we're done addressing maybe 4 or 5 memories, then we look to start rewriting those old beliefs into beliefs that will help them on their journey.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So how far do you find people go back? Like what age?
Sometimes it's pre-verbal. Yeah, I mean, and that's always interesting.
So pre-verbal, like 1, 2,
Yeah.
in utero, 0.
No, not in utero. Sorry,
Not in utero.
not in utero.
Okay.
We haven't gone that far.
I bet people go that far. So
no, that's awesome.
Yeah, spiritual realm.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Okay, but you're saying 1 or 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's so many shame experiences that happen then unintentionally. I think by parents. Really, like even I entered parenthood trying to be very conscious of not creating shame experiences. But sometimes stuff just happens, right? Where you're like, oh, or you can see that you didn't intend the child to feel shame at all, but somehow they do.
Yeah.
That's often, I know as a parent that was often difficult for me, like heartbreaking sometimes.
Difficult.
Like, yeah, like I didn't intend you to feel shame here. So is that what you're talking about? I mean, sometimes it's intentional. You get shitty parents, right?
I think for my guys, it's intentional. Yeah.
Okay. Right.
Yeah. I know that your children are fine. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. They're not. I always tell them I hope you enjoy therapy as much as I do. You know.
That's funny.
Totally. They're going to need it, you know. I don't think I know any child of a psychologist who like hasn't been in therapy.
That's so funny.
Yeah. So I don't assume that. But you know, it being in our field, you hear absolutely awful stories.
Yes.
You know, sometimes this is real cruelty that parents
it's very cool. Yeah.
have inflicted on children, either consciously or unconsciously, one of the two. Yeah. So you're going back to those memories.
Yeah.
And saying, okay, what happened? What did you conclude? What are the feelings? And if we could move forward from age 1 without shame, what would it be like?
Yeah. Or what would you tell dad in that moment when he caused you that shame? You know, and sometimes that's really powerful too, because they're able to talk to dad, you know, from that little girl's point of view, but you know, they have all this knowledge now and all this,
Yes, that's so true. Yeah, I do a very similar thing when I'm doing core healing. If it's safe, then we talk to the parent.
Yeah.
And then we do healing around that relationship as well, which is very moving for people. Like I'm always surprised at, well, less and less as I do it more and more. But you know, particularly in the beginning, I was very surprised at the emotion and feeling that would come up under hypnosis.
Yeah.
That sometimes people couldn't access in the conscious state sometimes.
No.
But it's there in under hypnosis.
Agreed. It's sort of there just festering. It's like, oh, wow. How long have I carried this around with me?
Yes. Right. And it's a release. That emotion is a release.
Yeah.
Right. Which is, that took me a long time to learn myself. Like I, taught myself not to cry for many years.
Mm.
And then I had to sort of relearn how to cry
Mm-hmm.
and see it as healthy and a release. And it is healthy. So
Mm-hmm.
healthy for your body and your
Yep.
mind and your soul, all
And
of
your
that.
soul.
So we sort of strayed away from your atheist clients, right? Into shame work and these different ways to get to shame through hypnosis. But you said there's some other ways in your practice too. You use art.
Mm-hmm.
What are some
I use
other?
art. I use Janina Fisher's work. I really like her, and so I use a lot of somatic interventions. So
Okay, I'm not familiar
maybe.
with her work.
Oh God, she's awesome.
Yeah.
Yes, Janina Fisher.
Okay.
So maybe an intervention would be take shame under your wing, and so maybe just understanding that shame is not who you are. It's not the embodiment of you. Maybe it's just a part of you.
Mm-hmm.
And so, maybe putting it on the couch next to you and what would you like to say to shame? Or, maybe what is it saying to you?
Yeah.
Which is always the harder part. But, and so it gives you a little bit of the sense of control and it makes it less powerful, when you could just sort of talk to that part of you.
Mm-hmm. So do you think that that's why your clients do so well? You're saying that they're often better in like successions.
Yeah.
Is because you're
Yeah.
doing some of that shame work. Like that's the root for you.
To me, that's the root. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say, do you track your relapse rates? But that's really hard to do.
I would love to.
I know, unless someone comes back. Like often with smoking, I'll ask permission. Like, is it okay if I follow up with you in 3 months? Because a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people don't know that as psychologists and counselors and therapists, we have ethical guidelines where we're not actually allowed to reach out to you whenever we want to check on you.
Yeah.
There's a
Yeah.
lot of people who don't know that. So
Mm.
you have to ask permission. Is it okay if I follow up with you? If it's appropriate, obviously. So
Yeah.
smoking, I'll often ask, and most of them say, sure. Like, yeah, I'd love a 3-month follow up or a 6-month or whatever that is.
Yeah. I'm actually rewriting my forms right now and I'm working on language to sort of add that in there. Like, can I give you a survey at 3 and 6 months? And,
Mm-hmm.
will you be okay with that? Just to have it
Yeah, that would be
formally.
great data.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, do you ever do any of the aversive techniques where you pair the addiction or addictive substance with something really aversive under hypnosis?
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll do it. We'll do it with smoking. I've only tried it with smoking.
Okay.
And it seemed to work really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so let's pair smoking with the most vile substance you can ever imagine. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you mentioned something earlier. You mentioned that sometimes you'll find someone, a sponsor, quote unquote, who's atheist. How do you
Mm-hmm.
go about that if they're not in 12 step?
Yeah. So luckily I have real go-getters that come to see me and we'll just work it into our relapse prevention plan and within 30 I'll say, you have 30 days to find somebody, other than me, because you only see me once a week. And let's be honest, that just isn't enough. Even though I tell them you can bookend your days with me, contact me in the morning, contact me in the evening. They don't do that. So
Mm-hmm.
I say, find somebody. It can't be your wife or your girlfriend.
Right.
And they just do. I don't know if it's because we've set that intention early on, but they'll come in the next session and say, Adina, I found this person and this person's perfect. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, that
Yeah.
was a revelation. As I've said in the podcast before, I'm a big fan of 12 step. I've never been addicted to drugs or alcohol, but I've been in other programs. And I was like, this sponsored thing is fantastic. Like
It is.
I can call them at like 10 a.m. and 12, and 2
Yeah.
and 1, like however much I want. And
However
generally they'll
much
pick
you
up.
want.
I was like, you can't do that with it there. I mean, you could, but it'd be very costly. And
It would be costly.
and actually, you pretty much can't. Like, we're in session a lot of the time, right? Or we have families
No,
or
yeah.
whatever. It's a different type of relationship for sure than a sponsor. But that's interesting. So they end up just finding someone through whatever means that serves that function for them.
Correct.
And you feel like that part of, that evolved from 12-step, but that part of the program is really good for them.
Yeah. I love that part of the program.
Yeah. And you mentioned SMART recovery too.
Yes.
Which is not a 12-step recovery model. So
Correct.
Can you tell the listeners a little bit about SMART recovery?
Yeah. So unfortunately, I haven't been to a meeting for SMART recovery, but I have talked to a lot of the meeting leaders in the past. And so what they tell me is that, it's very cognitive behavioral based. So looking at your triggers and looking at how to replace those behaviors with new behaviors. And there is no, you don't have to subscribe to a God in order to be a member.
I know there's meetings around the country.
Yeah, there are meetings around the country. There aren't that many SMART recovery meetings in Richmond, which is awful. And they don't have a sponsor component either.
Oh, they don't? Okay.
No.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I learned about it actually from another podcast.
Dwayne
Osterland's podcast.
Yeah, I like Dwayne.
I'm trying to remember the name of the podcast. Is it The Addicted Mind?
It is The Addicted Mind.
The Addicted Mind. Yeah, it's an excellent podcast, and he covers all kinds of different programs. It's not just 12-step. So that's fascinating. Well, it has been a wonderful time speaking with you. Can you tell people how to find you if they'd like to work with you?
Yeah, so they can find me at my website, and it's adinasilvestri.com. I'll spell it. It's ADINA, S as in Sam, IL, V as in Victor, ESTRI.com. And then we're also on a variety of social media platforms.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
I hope you truly enjoyed today's episode. Remember that you can get free hypnosis downloads over at my website, drlizhypnosis.com, DRLIZ hypnosis.com. I work all over the world doing hypnosis. So if you're interested in working with me, please schedule a free consultation over at my website, and we'll see what your goals are and if I can be of service to you in helping you reach them. Finally, if you liked today's episode, please subscribe to the podcast or tell a friend. That way, more and more people learn about the power of hypnosis. All right, everyone, have a wonderful week. Peace.